Each exam season I kind of do something a bit weird.
Right.
The first one was I got a tattoo. Just walked out the library and went to the tattoo parlour around the corner. Spent like £400 on a paintball gun set, never once fired it. And then like last summer I dyed my hair bleach blonde.
Student mental health seems to be constantly in the news. I want to know your actual experiences.
Like, it's crazy how little we knew about it.
How uni does make it quite clear where you need to go.
It can get quite lonely at times. You're not alone, you can do this.
It's going to be great and it's going to be shit.
It's been 5 months since I sent a video out asking for as many students all over the UK to talk about student wellbeing. Right now, we're going to go and talk to some who responded.
I'm a third-year student at Plymouth University.
I'm a student of politics and geography at Southampton.
I study architecture here in London. I study bakery and patisserie at UCB.
History and American Studies student at University of Manchester.
I'm here in Bangor studying forestry.
I study history.
And we're in Swansea.
I'm doing adult nursing at UE at the moment.
Hello. Let's get this sorted while the weather's
Doing all right, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Like that.
Yeah. Oh, I did.
How do you think the uni in general deals with student wellbeing?
As a whole, they do. They have the services, they have like everything they do offer a variety of things.
One issue for a lot of people is they don't know where to go
Yeah.
or what services there are. But I mean, I think a lot of students do know that there are things available. I mean, I think from my experience, my only issue I found is it's difficult to get something quite soon, because I know that you can go in, speak to them, book an appointment. I've done it in the past and they've been like, well, we can see you in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And I was in London at the time, so it didn't really help.
I think if you're going for like the proper formal kind of counselling kind of route, it's going to be difficult to get into, which is obviously it's expected, because counselling, again, it's the same with like the NHS, you just have a massive waiting list.
Yeah.
But with the advice centre, you can just drop in and you can go in and you can be like, look, I'm panicking about this. And they don't just talk about, not just like necessarily you have to go in and talk about your mental health, but you can talk about, say, if you're struggling about debt, which is going to impact your mental health later.
Yes.
For there and then kind of advice service, they're fantastic.
What do you think of the house, Weronika?
I'm just lost. It's like a big labyrinth. It's so big.
I feel like how uni does make it quite clear where you need to go when it comes to if you do need to get help for any reason to do with well-being. We kind of all know there's this one place you go to, it's the student hub, and that's kind of, it's very well known, like from day one you come to uni.
You know where it is, but it's not really available, or it's a long wait.
It's like, yeah, it's a long wait. Like, I feel like other bits of it are maybe like quicker than like different routes. I probably like them. I feel like mental health route will definitely be one of the ones that's definitely got a longer waiting list.
My friend on my course, she applied for counselling through the doctors, and they said apply through the uni too because it's often quicker, but in the end she was waiting months and months for the uni, and she ended up getting the counselling from an outside source quicker.
Morning.
Morning.
I wanted to see how easy it was to get some, support, and I called them up and they could offer me one like the next day, so I think that's really good, and you don't hear a lot about that in lots of other unis, but then I don't know if it's the same for like French A and the other campus.
So do you think there are gains of therefore being on a small campus? And
Definitely, there's a lot less of us.
They kind of chase you down to just hear about how your experience is going and how they can guide you a lot. And also, you have counsellors. They've also started up like an online site where you can talk 24 hours online to a counsellor if you need help in the middle of the night, Also, this whole month of February, they're doing a whole wellness month. First week was about mental health, and then, food and how it can all lead to you being able to cope better with university pressures.
You kind of come to uni and you have like in your mind a expectation of what it's going to be like, and if it differs from that sometimes, then you just feel like it's not meant to be part of your uni experience. You speak to like any adult and they just think, oh, you're at uni, you're just eating pizzas and drinking beer all the time, and there's so much of an expectation of the kind of social aspect of it.
Oh yeah, sick!
I don't know what the day be.
Freshers week is just the most overrated week of your life. Like, you're going out with a bunch of people that you just don't know, it's just not that fun. And also I would say like the first like 10 weeks are actually really quite tough. You can't get too caught up in that. Like I know people that like don't even go out anymore because they're so stressed and like constantly at the library and stuff, which is, you know, good, commendable. But I think if you just constantly worrying about work, I think that's another thing that can, you know, get you down. You're worried about your grades and stuff. Like as long as I think it's all about balance.
Would you say that's also an important life skill potentially, to know a balance of work and social?
Yeah, 100%.
Stand up, please stand up, please stand up.
It's been the best time of my life.
Ah, that's great. Well, that's great to hear.
I quite like the independence.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's talk a bit about that and then, like, kind of what are the real positives from moving from home to uni?
I mean, obviously I live in London and it's just so expensive and it's just boring. And like, there's not really anything like student orientated, because if you want to like a student night in London, it's impossible because you're always just going to find adults there. If it's a cheap night in London, you'll just find whoever there. But like, if you're in like a student town, you will just be around students.
Weirdly enough, university being so full of so many people, it can get quite lonely at times.
We don't even have a front room in our house, so it's either like your bedroom or the kitchen. Yeah. There's like the two places you would go. So then like all of us spent like our whole days in our rooms or someone else's room. I have like one of the biggest rooms in the house, so I have like at night we'll all be in there. I've got like a sofa, we just sit on and drink and stuff. So I spend a lot of time in my room.
And that's a struggle for your insomnia?
Yeah. I'm just constantly in my room.
You end up sort of living by yourself, even when you're living with people. Do you know what I mean? At one point, I was in my second year in BA, I was living with like 8 people. But then, like, you know, with that many people, like social things happen and things can break up. And again, if you're an anxious person, if any kind of like relationship or like, you know, sort of like argument you might have or disagreement you might have, it can like stick. And then just like, it makes your interactions harder and harder. So your little bubble of people gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller.
I'm very, very fortunate in that I've got a lot of people around me. So I tend to kind of make sure that there's always something going on. So there's a social that I'm going to, or a kind of a student-based activity, or even just a study group. Because as much as you walk around campus and there's so many people, it can still feel very isolating because you're suddenly completely alone in this new city.
I got like told I was severely dyslexic when I was younger, so I was like the dumb one, not that smart. And for me to go to university and something that I really like, I was, you know, so happy, and especially being in Birmingham. And then I was in like a long-term relationship at the time, and then for like 2 years, and I split up with them in like October, and I just went wild. Yeah, I went wild. Like, it was really fun, and I was dating people and seeing people. I was having the best time. And then one night, this person I was seeing, things got out of hand and ended up being raped, which was like, it was kind of like, shit, this is actually life and it's quite fragile. I sort of called them and they all like, you know, we all gathered around each other. It was like a massive panic. I was kind of dealing with it, like, I was still getting drunk and like having fun. And then I met, I got into a relationship that was terrible, just wore me down, and I didn't like myself anymore, like how I used to. That ended, and I just like, everything that had happened, like with the whole rape and stuff, that hit me, and I was broken, and I didn't really want to feel anything. And then I went to like self-harm, and the way that I sort of think in my head and process it was, I was in so much pain in my head and I just couldn't bear it, and it needed to be physical for me to deal with it. And then I looked at it and was like, okay, shit, I need to sort myself out.
This is like getting back to that point again.
This is a problem now, like. Yeah. So I went home, my mum looked after me, and like all you lot gathered around me again, like. And then
it was a slow build back up to, and it still is, such a slow build back up to, you know, who she was.
Yeah, and now I'm getting there again. So when I first sort of came to uni, I was like such a happy person. I would look at myself and be like, you're amazing, like, and I'm sort of slowly getting back up to that. But like, you know, like yesterday I was out and I saw the guy that raped me, which I've not seen You know, so that was like a big one, and I had a panic attack and stuff. But then it's like, that's gonna happen, things are gonna hit you, but just build back up. It's not like knocked me down, so it's like going all the way back to the bottom. It's just a little bump, and you keep going, you know.
Thank you for sharing it.
It's okay.
It's very brave.
What about your story?
What is my story? I guess I hadn't really experienced much in life. Like, I still think I haven't really. There was never any negative issues, or you know, there was nothing like that. And I was a very happy person. Coming to uni, I massively had very high expectations of what it was going to be like, and when it wasn't like that, it was very like, oh, okay, you know, how do we deal with this? And I struggled a lot with my sexuality. I was massively in denial, I think, for a while. I think then I, you know, had issues with certain things, and I then started closing myself off quite quickly. Shut myself in my room for God knows how long, and making it completely black, and then, you know, not eating and having to literally force myself to eat or remind myself to eat. I met someone and had a, you know, a lovely time, and then it didn't go very well. As lovely as it was also, it had its, you know, toxic parts, and I don't think I was treated amazingly. I had to go back home for like, I don't know how long it was, and I'd gone through this massive stage of, I guess, yeah, like, it's weird to say like self-harm, I guess you'd say that, I don't know. So it was also coping with that, and I think I always said to myself, oh, you know, I was never going to be this person that would ever treat myself like this, and, you know, look at myself in this way, and, you know, I'd forget who I was, you know, and, you know, I still kind of don't really remember who I used to be. Like, I think I've just made myself again. I think that's what I'd done.
Most people have asked us kind of like what they feel about student wellbeing, but I feel like there could be a bit more context with yours before we get into that. Do you want to say?
I can give context, yeah.
Okay, great.
So for the past 2 years, things kind of got turned upside down for me when I was supposed to start a placement year. So I got to take a year out of studying to go and get, you know, basically do a job for a year, work with trees, which is like incredible. It's what you want to do with your life. But that all kind of fell to pieces when I had my first seizure, and everything kind of just messed up really. Just everything was gone. I had to take a year out.
How has the uni been with your process?
The uni's been great. They've been amazing. They've been there throughout the whole thing. So, I mean, the only reason I'm having seizures now is because I hit my head in first year when I tripped up a curb. And the uni have been there the whole time, and they've been amazing. They've just always been there. I've always known, I've got several points of contact that I can go to and just be like, what am I supposed to do now? Or I can go to them and be like, oh my gosh, I had an awful weekend, I can't do my work, what am I supposed to do? Or I need to go home, like, help me. And there's always been someone that I can go and literally walk into the office and just burst into tears. And there's no judging, there's no, you know, there's nothing. They're all like, we get it, it's fine, we'll help you do what you need to do. I suppose the flip side is the disagreements between what you think is right for you and what the uni think is right for you. So back in November, I was classed as not fit to study, and I got sent home, and it was a really long battle to be able to come back to study, and for them to see my point of view, and they were saying being at home is the best thing for you, and I was like, I actually know me better, and I think that being here is better for me because I've got friends and I've got the trees, and so they have been there for me, but then there's always that difficult battle between what's best for you and what they think is best for you.
Obviously it's coming from a place of care, correct?
Yes,
so,
yeah.
Do you think they ever make kind of right decisions or do you think in general?
I think now when I look back at the whole thing in hindsight, they were definitely spot on the money with what decisions they made, and I think obviously when I'm there, I'm in the moment and I'm like hot, just like I want to go back and study, I want to do this, I want to do everything because that's what you want to do. And I think sometimes you can't actually think about things rationally because you're too caught up in your own messy head and things are spinning around. It's all like, whoa. So I think the beauty of hindsight is actually uni have made a lot of the right decisions. And even say when I've been at home, which is like 250 miles away, they've still been there at the end of an email, at the end of the phone. They're still willing to support me. They record all my lectures for me. They will send me extra work to do. They've been there. So I think it's the heat of the moment, not letting. I think sometimes it's good to take a step back and almost look at it from the uni's perspective. Because obviously, yeah, like they say, they've got a duty of care.
How do you personally keep up with your own work with all those struggles?
I think it's hard. I think I've realise the difference in myself. I'm quite a hyper, like super happy person all the time, but that's kind of changed because I've suddenly had this kind of internal dialogue where I'll go through like massive ups and massive downs, so it's kind of like a roller coaster, which everyone has, but it's kind of just been accentuated by this whole process. And I'll have periods after I've had a seizure where I'm like this insanely paranoid person where I'm walking up the stairs like, oh, whatever happens now? I'm in a lift, I'm like, oh my gosh, like what if? And there's all these what ifs, and you think, I'm just gonna lie in bed today, or I'm just gonna stay here and not do anything. But I mean, that's, obviously, you've got those great days where you're motivated, you do loads of work, you meet loads of people, you say hello to people, you have coffee, you chat, and it feels like wonderful to be alive. So I think it's almost just managing my own expectations and being sensible, not overworking, just being like, if you're having an off day, have an off day.
For me, uni started out really bad. I was in halls which were off campus, and I was kind of put in a place where I didn't really get along with the people around me. I was going through panic attacks at that time as well, so it was like, when I felt isolated, it was even worse.
Do you mind mentioning to me how you kind of dealt with your panic attack?
I would call home all the time and I didn't know what to do, and I just had to talk it through with somebody who I trusted. But there were often times when I didn't have that. I was taught by a family friend to ground my feet as a way of like realizing that everything was still fine and I wasn't actually dying, which I felt like I was. I can't even tell you when I stopped having panic attacks, because it's one of those things where it just, over time, they didn't happen anymore.
Is it by any chance like a bit hard to remember? Is it kind of
yes.
very,
Yeah, completely. Like, it was like, oh yeah, I had them for like 3 or 4 months, but I don't know what happened. So, it was almost like I changed my approach to them.
So you just kind of like accepted it, so okay, cool, right, I know this is a bit of a problem, but I'm gonna now deal with it.
Yeah, and it's like you kind of have to feel that feeling, right? Which is what I wasn't doing before, because I was like, this is an odd feeling that I shouldn't be having, and then I was trying to fight it.
If you have a friend who's having a panic attack, how would you approach it?
I definitely kind of sit them down and make sure that they weren't doing anything else. The second thing is it has to come from the person. Like talking at the person doesn't help. I found that something that was really useful for me was having someone who would breathe with me. The time that I realized that I was okay was when I started to talk. And then it was a realization, okay, if I can talk, then I'm not breathing. So it's like giving that person the space. It's a safe space for that person, basically.
I started university in feeling rubbish, and it wasn't until towards the end of, maybe halfway through the year, that I got in contact with the services. You know, you have to fill in these forms and you know, describing what it is that's going on, and they have to pick an appointment and stuff, and I had a very busy schedule, so like just finding a day that I could like come in was quite difficult. And also with these forms, I think a big problem is that they're so, I don't know, like inhuman sometimes, like ticking these boxes when like you're so confused anyway as to what you're feeling. You're like, am I this? I don't know. Like, you know, it's kind of quite a daunting process. Almost, you just want to be able to talk to a person straight away. Very like worried about getting help, didn't really know how to talk to my parents about it. My parents didn't really know how to talk to me about it.
Does your uni not have any drop-in services or anything? You've got to fill out a form before
There is, but it's like a group one, and I think I was unsure of like who else would be there, and like I didn't really want to pronounce myself in front of people that I didn't know and like weren't qualified. I don't know. There was also that, I don't know if you've ever had it, but like in the waiting room in the counselling area where you'd sit and there would be like people that you recognise from around uni also sat down. You kind of all just kind of like nervously like have eye contact, and you're just like, oh, you want to ask like, so what are you in for? But like no one ever says anything. Everyone's just like, oh, how are you? And then you see them go off with a counsellor and you're like, well, I'll never know like what was behind that facade. But yeah, it's funny. Eventually it improved through medication. I mean, through other ways as well, but I think for me anyway, medication was kind of really particularly necessary. When taking medication, you've got to realise that it's kind of a booster, something to push you into a point where you can start kind of fending for yourself more. It's not the answer. It's not the only way like that you can survive. It's there to like push you into a point where you're better prepared.
Big thing is that boys don't talk. I thought that that was an area that we could maybe be a bit better on. We had a welfare officer introduced last year who sort of looked at injuries and stuff like that. So I thought involving that in the welfare officer, like sort of the more mental health kind of side of things, would be a positive thing.
We have a partnership with Solent Mind, which is a local mental health charity, which is part of Mind. They do this thing called Red January. Basically, it's run every day January because they know the impact that exercise and stuff can have on mental health. We did a bit of fundraising for them by doing that, so we've got about 13, 14 boys doing it, which is really good. Boys also were saying like we feel better physically and mentally. Like just the running was just like such a good thing. Like I was looking forward to my runs.
Yeah.
And like I ended up doing 15k one day, and I was just like, it just clears your head. Yeah. It was really good.
Especially sort of obviously the January exam time. Yeah. You've got like quite a lot of stress going on. If you've got a whole day revision in the library, you're stuck, and then you can just go for like a 20-minute run. As you said, you know,
it's like a good like positive procrastination. We wanted to fundraise for them, but we also wanted something in return. Like we wanted like them to help us like recognise signs and symptoms. They came in and talked to our committee. We learned a lot about a lot of mental health issues that we didn't know.
Yeah. I didn't realise OCD could have such like massive consequences. Like the lady who was running it, she said that they had a case where I think a person couldn't leave the house, like had to do a 3-hour check before any time they left the house, even if it was just to pop down to the shops, because they had to sort of check that all like the windows were locked, everything like that. Yeah. So it was stuff like that that sort of opened my eyes. I didn't realise that something which most people would probably see as trivial, like you say, oh, they've got OCD, could actually have such a big impact on someone's life.
So the thing that probably should be taught in schools as well, because like it's crazy how little we knew about it.
Yeah.
It's in the bar. Okay. Oh. Ah, breakfast. And he just asked me. Nice.
Talk a bit about trying to help other people out as students and stuff. Yeah. Like, what are some of the problems which come up with that, and what are some of the gains as well? Let's talk.
I mean, in a general sense, there's just the idea of being there for each other. So, like, I mean, like one of our lecturers back in BA, who I liked a lot, one of his first things he said to us before anything else was, "You've got to always check that you're all okay." It feels good to check on other people as well.
If you're away from home in like a foreign environment for 3 years, you want to have like good people around you.
With some of the bigger ones, like helping people with a specific mental illness or a condition, or like a neurodiverse condition, you know, like EUPD or schizophrenia or bipolar or lots of other things. That depends.
As much as like rugby is like so fun and like we love it, we want the boys to be happy. Like we want everyone to be okay and like comfortable with coming to us. It's
rewarding when it goes right. It feels good to see someone developing and you know, doing well. But also I think the biggest thing is that at least for myself, as someone that's helping her out, but then also is dealing with my own things, it can be, sometimes it can be frustrating.
You can have the problem obviously if you have your community and it's all kind of out and like don't talk to each other and stuff like that, we like all just go crazy.
Yeah.
So it's useful to obviously open that community up so that you've, as you say, because rugby lads fully back each other up anyway, so it should be a very open community, hopefully.
But I know my house are, because I live with 5 other rugby boys, and we're definitely a very open house and happy to talk about anything. Like if someone's having a bad day or struggling a little bit, feeling anxious, we can literally just come into my room, have a chat, have a cup of tea.
Have a cuddle.
Have a cuddle, yeah. That seems very prominent in your house.
Yeah. when you're trying not to give up on yourself and someone else is vocally talking about giving up on themselves, it can be very frustrating for you. It's not a direct quote, but you remember that Lincoln film with Daniel Day-Lewis? Yeah. There's a bit in there, 'cause his wife had a lot of issues at one point after their son died, and he says to her at one point in the film, he says, I never got angry at you because you were sad, it's because I couldn't allow that sadness in myself. So he couldn't, it's hard seeing someone in that state sometimes when you're trying to keep yourself strong as well.
I went for the role of welfare officer because obviously going through it all and seeing people who do struggle and don't know what's like available, I want to stand and kind of like help them and be like, look, you're not alone, you can do this.
Key thing I've learnt on this trip is that we all have our own ways of dealing with stuff. Whether that is talking more to friends, getting prescribed medication, or having the university watching out for you. On February the 18th, we headed home, amazed by the openness with the people we'd spoken to, and despite the trip, we were still smiling right till the moment we got back. But something was missing. Back in Bristol, I wanted to know if there was any way we could better prepare students for uni life.
I'm a learning mentor in a sixth form. By trade, I'm a therapist, and so learning mentor is like lots of different roles within sixth form. So some of it to do with mental health, some of it to do with learning, some of it to do with mediation, revision, all kinds of different things.
So Emma, we basically, all of us here, we did a trip around the UK and went to a bunch of different universities and spoke with quite a few students. I was just wondering if you think there's any way how sixth form in itself could play a role in preparing students for uni better.
When people start to feel isolated, they start to shut down and become a bit defensive. We go into slightly defensive mode, don't we? We're like, ooh, I don't feel okay here, and so I'm going to withdraw. So there's something about putting yourself out there, and I think we provide opportunities for that. We can't make people invest in those things. So putting on opportunities, talking to people who are feeling isolated, I think those are some of the things that we do. I'm sure that we could do more.
Do you think it's easier to notice someone when they're struggling in sixth form contrast with university?
It's a much smaller number, and there is one, you know, we've got a head of year, we've got a head of sixth form, each student has got a tutor, they've got class teachers, then they've got all of us and anybody who else is involved, so there's a much smaller cohort of people to notice. But having said that, I don't think we always do. I think because it's a sixth form, people can come and go as they want, so people might walk into the building, attend a lesson and walk back out, and we might have seen them and said, hey, but I wouldn't necessarily notice if a student was by themselves, because lots of students are by themselves. They're going to a lesson that their other friends don't do.
I was never a big fan of school, but I've liked university. I think on the whole, university is pretty good.
We talk a lot about, you know, university's this really fun time and you're going to go and you make loads of friends, there's loads of opportunity, but actually maybe we don't talk about what is normal when you go to uni. Like, it's normal to feel a bit anxious about it. And yes, everyone else is in the same boat, or they might have one or two people that they know, but that doesn't mean that you instantly all bond and become best friends. Like, sometimes that means that you feel a bit isolated.
I think whatever happens at uni, you do tend to come out of it a better person.